first myth today came in via request, and it digs into one of the most unique yet often overlooked bands in all of music history. The Fugs. The question is whether or not the band actually once tried to have an exorcism outside of the Pentagon. Impossible and ludicrous, right? Well, clearly you don't understand just how creative and just how rebellious the Fugs were, because this one is totally true. We go back to October of 1967 with the Vietnam in full swing, and the Fugs were one of the most outspoken bands against the war. That month, a massive protest was planned outside of the Pentagon, and that's when the Fugs got the idea to hold an exorcism. On the day in question, they rented a flatbed truck, and the band and a bunch of friends hopped on the back and parked it at the end of the Pentagon parking lot. The band had gone ahead and written an easy to remember, easy to sing along with exorcism chant of sorts, and they went at it with the crowd joining in for the better part of 20 minutes, climaxing with a massive chorus of the phrase "out demon out." This was all captured on film, so go check it out if you don't believe it. Today's second myth raised a pretty large question that goes over a number of bands, because it asks if there's any truth to the stories that certain musicians ask certain specific groups of people to leave their concerts. Some of the most popular stories here are John Denver asking Jehovah's Witnesses to leave, Phil Collins asking Jewish people to leave, and Keith Urban asking Canadians to leave his shows. Obviously, these are all totally untrue, but they've persisted for decades. You can actually find the first stories of this going back all the way into the early 80s. And while there are tons of stories and tons of urban legends, there's not one shred of evidence that's ever been produced. Not one of them is true any way you slice it. The final myth today also came in via email, and it questions whether there's any truth behind the story that John Coltrane has been declared a saint by certain branches of Catholicism. There are actually kind of two answers here, because he hasn't been recognized by the formal Catholic Church in such a role, but he has achieved that status in offshoots of the church, and there are a number of churches devoted to John Coltrane as a saint. This all began shortly after his death by a church in San Francisco, and after a few collaborations and affiliations, we now have the St. John Coltrane African Orthodox Church in San Francisco. Now don't go thinking this is some sort of nostalgia or gimmicky thing, because it's not. It's a very serious exploration of how his music, his lyrics, and his other writings were wholly in their own way, often going back to the statement Coltrane himself once made when he said that God spoke to him while he was battling heroin addiction. There are a few documentaries out there that cover this subject, and in the end, it is 100% true that there are churches devoted to St. John Coltrane. So those are the myths for this week. I hope you dug them. Be sure to check back here every week as I delve into some of the coolest stories in music history. If you've got a myth you want me to check out, email it to me at thedailyguru@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook right here, and I'll see you guys again next time.